Fallout 4 is the equivalent of a modern landfill. A bunch of destroyed buildings, rubbish littered everywhere, even some bodies in there. And you always do kind of have to wonder what could make the Fallout wasteland even worse. And I think that if we go to a real world example, we can get one simple answer. Benjamin Netanyahu. There is nothing worse than having that man alive. So the question is, can you beat Fallout 4 as Benjamin Netanyahu? The rules for today are quite simple. I'm going to be very racist, politically biased, stereotype people, and that means these are going to be some of the rules. The first important rule, and this is probably the most important of them all, I can request US aid at any time, because Israel is the USA's greatest ally. Second rule, 90% of people are Hamas soldiers. Third rule, we're going to kill all children, kill all women, kill all medical aid, and kill any civilians I come across. And finally, I'm going to reclaim the land promised to me 3,000 years ago. Only because I want to keep this somewhat challenging, I will keep every civilian armed, even though they wouldn't be armed in real life. I'll also not be killing every single essential NPC, because you obviously cannot play the game, but I will be trying my best to wipe out as many essential NPCs as possible. Also, laser weapons, laser machine guns, anything really futuristic is banned. I want to keep this kind of close to a somewhat military-esque weaponry. And also, if you're offended by anything I say today, don't watch the video, grow some balls. I don't really care, to be honest. It's more just a bit of a political commentary, a little bit of a joke, so if you find it offensive, you can always just click off the video. Now, we're going to start off with me making my character. I spent a good while, a total of 7 minutes, making myself look as close as possible to Netanyahu. I don't think it was very good, but it honestly wasn't too tragic. I mean, look at that cracked ass jawline. I then get harassed by someone who wants my personal information, and I set my special stats. I put 1 in strength because I don't think BB trains very often, 7 in charisma because he is a politician at the end of the day, 4 in luck because he should be dead and somehow is still alive. The news then comes on and talks about bombs dropping, but as a diehard Zionist, I knew this day would come, and we will kill all the Goyim. The mighty justice of Israel is then delivered, and I get frozen in a kosher freezer. My wife then dies in a terrible tragedy, and instead of blaming the correct people, I blame Hamas and order the promised invasion of the Commonwealth. Out of the vault, I make my way to my neighbors' homes, and since I kicked them all out in 1948, I was able to do as I please and steal anything I wanted. Now it was time for me to bring proper justice to the Commonwealth and annex Concord from the grip of terrorists. In Concord, I ran into a bunch of civilians being terrorized outside the museum, and because I do have access to the 10mm pistol, it is quite a decent weapon, and I wiped out the raiders. Inside the museum, I got a shotgun off one of the dead raiders and breezed through the rest of the raiders. Now, if you thought I was actually going to help the Minutemen, you must have forgotten the whole idea of this playthrough. I am fucking Benjamin Netanyahu, with a full suit of power armor promised to me 3,000 years ago and a minigun. I swiftly remove these roadblocks to me having full control of the Commonwealth. After the museum, I declare the road between the Museum of Freedom and Diamond City an active combat exclusion zone, and as such, anyone in this area must be killed effective immediately. Of course, I'm not going to tell anyone I did this or make any proper announcements about this recent change. When Trashcan Carla walks down the clearly labelled and definitely not artificial military exclusion zone, I effectively neutralised her. As you can see, she was armed and dangerous, and I also exterminate some of the local shopkeepers who stole a shop that I rightfully own. Continuing on my journey, I unite with some fellow soldiers who are shooting down starving people at a police checkpoint. Of course, I join in and exterminate these starving civilians. The US military then tells me that there is an amazing base for us to control, and we head to ArcJet Systems. As usual, the walk there is boring, and I just let Paladin Dance do all the work, and inside ArcJet, I am ambushed by a planned attack set by Hamas. Luckily, the superior firepower of Dance protects me. Inside the engine core, I find out I can change my display color, and I make it a nice blue, and then I grab the deep range transmitter and speak to Dance. After which, I begin making my way to the Great Green Jewel and arrive at Diamond City. Now, you may be wondering, why have I not opened fire to exterminate all these evil terrorist members? However, as a professional Mossad agent, I must remain vigilant. and then find any excuse later to order a bombing of the city to exterminate everyone in one large swoop. It is really just much more effective. In the city, I overhear people speaking of a detective and I pay them a visit. I find out this detective was kidnapped by a gang, and as such I do the only logical option and launch an operation to kill 100 people to save one man. Unfortunately, this time there are no innocent civilians for me to kill, so this will have to do. In Park Street Station, the first room goes decently, even though I die once. On the second go around, I clear it out without too much trouble, and the second room was really a whole new story. The amount of bullshit that was happening here was just ridiculous. The fact I was also unarmored, in a clean tan suit, and had a 10mm pistol as my best weapon really didn't add to the fun. I eventually cheesed the encounter by running back and forth between the bed and the stairs, while taking out 1 or 2 triggermen at once. After that, I used my pimp boy, that's what it says in the script, to open the vault and kick the residents out because it was promised to me 3,000 years ago. The main atrium goes pretty smooth actually, which is weird since usually in a tough run I'll die at least 4 or 5 times, and then I die to Dino, something I thought was probably impossible. Trying again, this time I get up close and personal with him, which allows me to use my shotgun just that little bit more effectively, and I free Nick Valentine. Once I encounter Skinny, I lay a cowardly trap of landmines during our peace negotiations, and I use those to blow him up. Yes, this is some very honourable behaviour. Back in the heart of the Hamas hideout, I speak to Nick Valentine and recall the horrific events that took place while I was frozen. I make sure to emphasise that I'm the victim and the people who committed the acts, no matter who they are or what cost it is, must be neutralised. I also convinced Mayor McDonough to give me Kellogg's key, which is really weird since he's meant to work for the Institute, and I snooped around his house.
Gwinnett Stout beer, 44 caliber bullets, and cigars.
With a cigarette from the home, I let Dogmeat sniff it and then ditch him and make my own way to Fort Hagen. On the way, I got lost and found an innocent merchant all alone. As you can see, he was clearly a Hamas terrorist and needed to be eliminated. Eventually, arriving at Fort Hagen, I destroyed the turrets on the perimeter and entered inside uninvited. The synths did not welcome me into their home and killed me way too many times to count, so this is where I decide to utilize some of the $226 billion of US aid and request my suit to become armored and upgrade my 10mm pistol with some of the most advanced technology. With the USA now funding my personal interests, I clear the main floor easily and advance down the elevator. This second area is usually easier than the first one, so once again I was able to wipe it out quite well, and I also made sure to rob the armory and grab the Fat Man for later. As for Kellogg himself, I engaged once more in peace negotiations, which were very favourable for me, and as usual, the other party was the one that breached the deal, and it was not myself or Israel, who have breached 256 peace negotiations. The US Army soon arrives in the Commonwealth and I fly up to the Prydwen. Aboard, I launch Operation USS Liberty and eliminate random soldiers to stage the residents of Diamond City as a bunch of evil terrorists. After that, I also stage a full-blown assassination attempt on the Brotherhood's main leaders and blame Diamond City once again. I speak to Elder Maxon while he stands like a Sigma around the 10 dead people, and then I convince each of the proctors that Diamond City must be wiped out. Arriving at Diamond City, I use my army to wipe out all the residents who are unarmed and run away at the sight of my military. To begin, I launch a massive explosive weapon into a tight residential space and then order a ground invasion of the city. Unfortunately, the innocent people who die are actually Hamas terrorists, and even though we have some of the most precise weapons in the world, we had to flatten the whole city and tear every single building down. As an added bonus, we needed to make sure there were no terrorists inside of the schoolhouse, since we have a trend of bombing those buildings when they're filled with innocent children. After working in my own best interest while being funded by another organization, I need to at least do one beneficial thing for the Brotherhood to upkeep my name. So I help eliminate all the mutants at Fort Strong. Obviously, the Brotherhood pretty much does everything. They give me a bloody minigun that I get to ride into the fort, and to be honest, it was quite easy to just go in there and shoot every single super mutant after I shot down the behemoth with the minigun. On the outside, the 10mm pistol works very, very well, and inside the actual fort, again, the 10mm worked perfectly fine. So this was, quite honestly, a fairly simple and easy task. On top of this, because the Brotherhood just cannot resist funding more of my genocide and mass murder, they kindly provide me a full Exo 1 power armor suit, 1,000 1,000 missiles and
500
mini nukes. Now, you may say it's not fair to give myself all of this overpowered military weaponry against a bunch of majority underarmed or unarmed people. To that I say, tell Israel the same thing. Now, with my new military aid, I go over to Good Neighbor and make my entry very well known by killing a civilian on sight. After which, I go into the memory lounger and, while I talk to Dr. Amari, notice that she is highlighted red. Part of the Exo 1 power armor is it highlights all the enemies. I think it's quite clear and evident that everyone in the whole world is an enemy of Israel because everyone is highlighted a very deep red color. I then get to do something I've never ever done before, and I sat through Kellogg's memories. This has to be the most exciting part of Fallout 4. With all the information from Kellogg's mind, Dr. Amari sends me to the glowing sea, and with my aid from the Brotherhood, I'm able to annihilate anything that comes my way. I also get to see how cool and OP the missile launcher could be. I literally thought it was always quite a rubbish weapon, but I guess I never really maxed it out until today. I didn't even know that it had an auto-aiming system until I thought I'd just try it out. I then arrived at a very hostile location, and it needed to be cleared out, effective immediately. The Fat Man was the only possible weapon that would be fair to use here, because you never know what they could have done to me. I then continued to Virgin's cave and speak to him. Virgil sends me to Green Tech Genetics, and as you can imagine, some ragtag crew of unskilled soldiers would not have any chance against an over-armored, highly advanced military, and I should have a swift, decisive victory. As such, I began a war campaign for 1 year and 10 months. Why do I need that long to wipe out the gunners in Green Tech Genetics when I have advanced military technology? Well, let me tell you, that is a great question, but if you comment on my actions, you're an anti-Semite, so you should be quiet. The campaign is eventually successful, and I also get to use my missile launcher against the missile launcher gunner, an absolute irony, and hardcore revenge for all of the rage he's caused me in other playthroughs. I soon find out that my target is surrounded by prisoners and innocent people, so of course I choose to use the safest weaponry to ensure that while the target is neutralized, the prisoners and innocent civilians are safe. There was a witness who saw what I did, however, we did neutralize them in a very humane way. Now, after my treatment of prisoners, lack of care for civilians, massacres in Diamond City, and general atrocities and aggressive militaristic behaviors, the UN issued me a very stern warning, saying that I should stop the mass murder of people. I think it's quite clear that I definitely adhered to the UN's non-binding warnings that were given to my government, and I took their recommendations into account. Also, please take note here that Deacon is very much dead. I also removed the leadership in Good Neighbor, Adios Hancock, one of my favorite characters. With Good Neighbor cleaned out, I visited the Railroad HQ and spoke to Desdemona. Deacon, resurrected from the dead, and convinced her to let me into their HQ. That was a very big mistake. Boom! And the railroad was dead. I then used Tinker Tom's computer to decode the Corsair chip and take the information to Virgil, who drew up the plans for me. To repay him for his help, I gave him a good amount of precious, refined minerals, all in his body. He loved my gifts so much that he just stopped moving and never even moved again. He must have been in so much awe. With the plans in hand, I spoke to Elder Maxon, and he agreed to let me make the signal interceptor right in the middle of the Brotherhood base. I then teleported straight into the Institute, and I was finally home. Today, I really just want to do the Institute ending, maybe because I don't do it very often, and I haven't played Fallout 4 in a solid 6 to 7 months, but also because what's more Netanyahu than a secret underground power that acts in their best interest and gives no fucks about anyone else in the world besides themselves. After I arrive in the Institute, I couldn't resist blowing up Sean, for obvious reasons. However, I rewind time and then speak again to the actual Sean. I then agreed to stay in the Institute. Now ready yourself for the second most exciting part of Fallout 4. Hold on to your seats, because I get to speak to all 4 heads of the Institute. I know, how awesome and exhilarating. Father then actually does send me on a semi-exciting mission to reclaim a synth. The synth leads the raiders at Libertalia, however, the biggest issue is getting there alive. I was killed by a bloody Mirelurk Queen. Where the hell did a Mirelurk Queen even come from? Like, they're super hard to find, and there's just one chilling in this random spot. And after that, I spent 20 minutes running around, lost and confused about where to go. because I never teleport in from the Boston airport. After I finally find X688, we begin our mission to attack the raiders. As you're aware, at this point I'm definitely strong enough to handle myself in most situations when it comes to raiders, and really enemies without massive explosive weapons. The biggest issue here is definitely the water, because when you fall in power armor, you just get sucked into the abyss, and it's almost impossible to escape. After I do fall in some water, I have to reload back, kill every single raider again, and forget how to get up onto the main ship, so I become a rock climber, and once I am on the main ship, I begin killing everything once more. On the top of the ship, I do not even bother pretending to have a peaceful conversation, and I just fire at will. Somehow, the synth target magically survives even though all of his friends die, and I return to Father. Father tells me that there are a group of rogue synths who the Railroad are keeping in Bunker Hill, and I see this as a perfect opportunity to wipe out another major city and group of civilians. So I eagerly agree and take the opportunity and walk my ass over to Bunker Hill. There, I speak to the Corsair and begin exploding everything, everyone, anything that moves. I even shot down a vertibird, which was very fun and made a massive explosion. I also shot up the main area of Bunker Hill, especially targeting civilians and unarmed personnel before anything else. Inside the actual bunker, I used my mini nuke launcher to explode everything that moved, and with the room full of valuable synths, I delivered the same justice, because how dare they try and escape the Institute. The Corsair got mad at me for doing that and actually used its discretion to figure out that I was actually a threat to the Institute and really everyone in the world, and he began to attack me. However, I neutralized it quite quickly. Back at the CIT ruins, I spoke to Father, and he was not very happy about what I did at Bunker Hill, and he gave me a very stern warning, which I promptly ignored. Father then spoke at his board meeting, I know I'm very funny, and announced the fact that he's gonna die, oy vey, and I will inherit his power, taking total control of the Institute and the army of synths who will destroy and kill anything I say. Father and I then have a very big, deep, emotional conversation, and I express my disbelief that he's dying.
I had no idea.
I know this is... well, it's a lot to take in at once.
And to repay me, he sends me straight into the firing line of the Brotherhood of Steel. What a good son. Using the Brotherhood's own weapons against them gives a very strong sense of irony, and as a little added bonus, I'm killing them to get the beryllium agitator for the Institute's interests. The soldiers on the roof weren't too bad, to be honest, and once they were dead, I found a master keycard that took the elevator into mass fusion. On the way down, the soldiers tried their best to kill me, but to be honest, it was more a game of NES Duck Hunt than anything. At the bottom of the elevator, a Brotherhood soldier falls from the sky and then explodes faster than he came. I repower the elevator, try to kill the sentry bot before the door behind it opens. I prepare to enter the reactor, and once I'm in, I grab the beryllium agitator. On the way out from the reactor, my Mossad senses are tingling.
I feel my spider sense. Watch out!
And telling me that a sentry bot was about to attack, so I readied my mini nuke launcher and fired the second I saw the bot. It took 2 well-placed shots to explode him, and as for the assaultrons, I used the missile launcher to annihilate them from existence. I somehow destroyed both of them at once. In the lobby, I decided to protect all the synths and use my military aid in assistance. I also, obviously, aim to minimize the casualties. Soon, at the Institute, word about me being a successor to Father goes around, and some people decide that they should disobey me, and I have to go deal with the situation. On the first go-around, I actually solved the issue peacefully, which I've never done, but I also forgot that I'm playing as Benjamin Netanyahu, so that would fail the run, and I fixed this slip-up and ensure that my power remains. With my power over the Institute now solidified, I head to convince Wallace to join the Institute. At the homestead, there was a bunch of gunners, but somehow one of them was able to resist a nuclear warhead being fired directly at him. Fallout 4 has some peak physics and mechanics. This was also not the first time that somehow someone survived a direct mini-nuke hit that dealt no damage. In the homestead, I killed the Institute scientist who failed to get Wallace out of his house. That failed the mission, and then trying again, I convinced Wallace to leave with me and go to the Institute. Back home, with everything in motion, I recorded a non-violent message for the people of the Commonwealth to announce the entry of the Institute and how we
Have no desire to interfere in the unimportant details of your pathetic existences. We simply insist that you do not interfere with Institute operations. To do so would result in your complete annihilation. Rest easy. Know that the future is out of your control.
Father then sent me off to the remains of Diamond City to fix the radio. There was a terrorist in the shack and I neutralized the threat as usual. I placed all the dials and buttons and things in their correct places, and when I come back to the Institute, a scientist looks at me weirdly, so he is removed, because he may be a Hamas spy. In the reactor room, Father does some shitty speech about power and electricity, while I start up the reactor and secure the Institute as the powerhouse of the Commonwealth. With the reactor running, I attend the board meeting, and as the director of the Institute, I am told we are able to increase synth production, so I eagerly say,
So you're saying we can now wage war on the Commonwealth?
and achieve my Zionist goals. So now it was time to remove the final blockage, the Brotherhood of Steel. I begin my assault on the Brotherhood with a nuking campaign, wiping out a good chunk of soldiers before I shoot down the vertibirds. Definitely still one of my most favorite things to do. Then, as soon as I enter the base, I'm able to take out 2 of the 3 reactors. I didn't even know that I destroyed them. I guess the explosions must have done it. And then the third one is removed in the main tower. With thousands of synths teleporting in ready to destroy the entire Brotherhood and a full-scale war, I blow myself up. Trying again, I take out the 3rd reactor once more, and thousands of synths begin to invade and destroy the Brotherhood, and then I climb Liberty Prime and blow myself up again. This time though, I started off by destroying the 3rd reactor, thousands of synths swarming in, and I don't blow myself up. I kill Proctor Ingram with the mini-nuke launcher. She's such a beast that she takes 2 shots to take down one of the very few enemies, in my opinion, who is not like a Deathclaw that can survive 2 mini-nuke hits. And then I climb on top of Liberty Prime, defending the virus synth and raining hell down on all the Brotherhood soldiers. Explosion after explosion after explosion until all that remained was me, a bunch of synths, and one big motherfucking synth. With Liberty Prime now under my control, he shot down the Predwin, and I watched as the Brotherhood burned down. As the blimp crashed into the ground, I knew that there was nothing which can stop my unlimited control of the Commonwealth promised to me 3,000 years ago. Father then calls me back to the Institute because he is dying, and I speed up that death just a little bit, and I did beat Fallout 4 as Benjamin Netanyahu. As a quick post-run thought, this was obviously a very fucking stupid run. As you can imagine, it was meant to be more of a political mockery than a real challenging run. As an added note, I want to tell you guys that I do plan to make more videos on this channel. I know I've probably not uploaded in close to a year now, but I am going to be making some more stuff. Fallout 3, Fallout New Vegas. I've never done a Fallout 3 video actually, and possibly even some other games. So if you have any suggestions for videos, drop them in the comments. I'm always interested in seeing them. The videos I make usually are catered towards stuff I know, so if your video is a really good idea and I don't know much about the topic, it may not get made. But if you have any ideas, please do just tell me in the comments. I'm very interested to hear them. And other than that, I just want to say, please consider subbing to the channel. We are at like 800 subs, which is really nice. But obviously, I'd like to have a bigger number, because numbers are cool. Other than that, I just want to say, thank you all for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one. Oy vey.